Hello there and welcome to the channel. This will be my review of the yellow bleach cards from Union Arena. This will be the first of multiple videos for Union Arena that I will have on this channel. After this, I will have a purple bleach and green bleach review. And then in 2 weeks when the set comes out, I will have a case opening of bleach. And from there, you guys will eventually see gameplay video and deck profiles. I'll just jump right into it. First up, we have E-Burn, 0 energy, 1 action point, 2000 BP. He supplies 1 energy. He has step. If I'm not using 3 raid targets in a deck, I would definitely put 4 of him as my 0 cost energy base, as he will get early damage in and then come back to supply energy. As not, 0 energy, 1 action point, 2000 BP, supplies 1 energy. He also has the active trigger, which allows you to restand one of your people and give it 3000 BP for the turn. I think he is probably going to be the staple, one of the staple zeros for the yellow bleach decks, as his SR, in my opinion, is the best of the 4. Next up, we have the 3 energy, 1 action point, as not, 2000 BP, supplies 1 energy. This character gains 1000 BP for each resting character on your opponent's front line. So, at minimum, if blocked, he will be a 3000 BP. He also is one of your color triggers, which you can only have 4 of in the deck. But yellow's color trigger is choose one character on your opponent's front line, switch it to resting, and remains set to resting until the next time it would be switched to active. So they won't be able to, if they attack into you, they won't be able to block with it on the following turn. Next up, 4 energy, 1 action point, as not. He's your SR raid. He has the raid. Add this card to your hand if you have the required energy. Raid with it. 4000 BP, supplies 1 energy. He has Impact 1, and activate main if on the front line once per turn. Choose up to 1 character with 3000 BP on your opponent's front line and switch it to resting. So he will just reduce the amount of blockers your opponent has, so that way you can go wide and get damage in. Next up is Opie. Activate main if on the front line, switch to resting. Choose up to 1 character on your opponent's front line and switch it to resting. He's 2 energy, 1 action point, 3000 BP, supplies 1 energy. I actually really like this card because he is one of yellow's ways of resting that does not require a BP threshold. And if you can switch him to resting, rest one of your opponent's things, and then raid up something, sending him to the outside area, or playing the next card on top of him, so that way your board's wider than your opponent's board. And in combination with Asnot, you can rest down 2 of your opponent's blockers. So you'll have 4 attacks and they'll only have 2 opportunities to block. Now the upgrade version, the 4 cost, or the 4 energy, 2 action point Opie. 4000 BP. He has the get trigger, so if you get him in your life, you'll get him straight to hand. 1 energy, supplying. If there are 1 or more resting characters on your opponent's field, play this character set to active. And when attacking, choose up to 1 resting character on your opponent's front line and remains set to resting until the next time it will be switched to active. So, since he can be played in active, unlike all the other cards in Union Arena, you can actually rest the 2 energy version of him and then send him to the outside of the game and play that one in his place. And now you'll have 4 attackers. Next up is Jugram. 3 energy, 1 action point, 3000 BP. He supplies 2 energy. If there is a purple or green card on your opponent's field, reduce the energy required, or the required energy to play him from your hand by 1. So he becomes a 2 energy, 1 action point, double energy. I think for the first 2 weeks, he is actually very good as people will be upgrading the green Hunter x Hunter and the purple Bleach sets, which will both fall under his category. And Hunter x Hunter does have a purple set, and then Bleach's other one is green. So besides the mirror match of yellow Bleach and the blue Hunter x Hunter, this ability will always be active. He will become a little bit worse once Jujutsu Kaisen comes out, as I know the blue JJK deck will be very popular. Next up we have Do, 1 energy, 1 action point, impact negate, 2500 BP and 1 energy. He's not as good as Bleach's purple one, as the purple one can be summoned from the drop during the opponent's turn, and with his low BP he could be removed by skills, but it does take a removal or a special card out of your opponent's hand. So in that case, I think he's okay. He's not an auto include for me. Next up is Driscoll, 2 energy, 1 action point, impact 1, 3000 BP, 1 energy. I really like this card in a yellow version of the deck where you're low on your energy requirement and not playing anything really higher than maybe 1 or 2 5s, and just going wide and trying to aggro your opponent down. In that type of deck, I really like Driscoll. Next up is Na. If this character is active, he generates an additional energy. He's 2 energy, 1 action point, 2500 BP. He is probably going to be a 3 of, if not a 4 of, in a lot of yellow Bleach decks, especially if they're trying to get to Yhwach or Jugram. As if going first, your turn 1 play is a 0 energy, 1 action point, and then your turn 2, where you'll have 2 AP, it will be another 0 or a 1, and then you can put him down, so now you're already generating 4 on the following turn. Alright, next up we have Basby, 5 energy, 1 action point, 4000 BP, supplies 1 energy. He is a draw trigger, and activate main, place 1 card from your hand into the sideline. This character gains damage 2, and when this character attacks and wins a battle, draw a card until the end of your turn. I don't know how I feel about this card. It will mainly be a wait and see. I'm not the biggest fan of discarding 1 card for a damage 2 that probably won't work. And then the draw, you're really just replacing the card that you discarded. So he's someone I will try to test out, but I'm just not the biggest fan of this card. Next up we have Bambita. She is a 0 energy, 1 action point. She has the get trigger, 1500 BP, and supplies 1 energy. I'm a bigger fan of the raids that have get triggers because it allows you to not miss on seeing your lower forms to raid on top of. Next up we have 2 energy, 1 action point, 2000 BP, supplies 1 energy, draw trigger. When played, choose up to 1 character with 3500 or less BP on your opponent's front line and switch it to resting. I'm actually a fan of this card in a aggro version of the deck because you can rest a lot of your opponent's early blockers to get in early damage. Next up, we have a raid version, which is 4 energy, 1 action point, 4000 BP, supplies 1 energy, and she has the raid, so add to hand or raid on top of. If it is your turn, choose up to 1 resting character on your opponent's front line and sideline it. Now, on her own, she's not the best card. You would have to play other cards and combos to actually get her off. So she will most likely not be the ideal first raid target you send up. And she will definitely need to be paired with Asnot, as he'll be able to rest someone. Opie will also be able to rest someone. Her lower form will be able to rest. So that's 3 potential ways to get cards rested. And you do have your color trigger, which can rest anything when your opponent attacks into it. So on the following turn, you can send her up. It does feel weird to raid her, as you won't get her on play effect. So you're mainly just getting the discounted, not having to pay the AP for it, and just getting a 4000 BP blocker on board. Next up, we got BG9. He's 3 energy, 1 action point, 3000 BP. He supplies double energy. When played, if there's a resting character on your opponent's field, draw a card. If you are using Asnot special trigger, as well as Bambita, the 2-drop especially, and Opie, I would see him as a staple 4 of, as your choice of double energy supplier. Other than that, I'm not sure if you really choose him over the Yuha Baha, as I think there's a better option later on. Next up, we have Bernice. 0 energy, 1 action point, 1000 BP, supplies 1 energy. This is activate main, switch this card to resting. Once per turn, it generates an additional energy until end of turn, and at the end of your main phase, sideline it. I think every color has one of these. I'm not the biggest fan of these, personally, unless you're running the 1/1 bouncers. But with Yellow Bleach, I'm not the biggest fan of the 1/1 bouncers, because there's no on plays you're going to get to abuse. Next up, speaking of the 1/1 bouncers, 1 energy, 1 action point, mask, 1500 BP. He supplies double energy. When played, return 1 character on your field with 1 or less required energy to your hand. If you cannot, return this character to your hand. So for him, none of the zeros have anything on play, and none of even the ones have an on play that you're going to get to reuse and get a lot of benefit. Okay, next up we have Jugram. 0 energy, 1 action point, 1500 BP, 1 yellow. He get trigger 0. He will be your raid fodder. Then we have the 3 energy, 1 action point, 3500 BP, supplies 1 yellow energy. He is a stand trigger. He has passive, if there are 2 or more characters with 4000 or more BP on your opponent's field, this character gains 500 BP. That's just a flat passive, so on your opponent's second attack, he'll have 4000 BP. That will only really be relevant for blocking 3500s. But on attack, their second block, he'll be a 4000 for that attack. Next up, we have the Raid Jugram. 5 energy, 1 action point, 4000 BP, supplies 1 yellow energy, raid trigger. He has impact 1, and if he's on the front line at the end of your attack phase, if your opponent has activated a trigger ability this turn, you get to draw 2 cards and discard 1. This is really good because if they get any get trigger, draw trigger, or one of the 3 different unique triggers, you'll get to cycle through your deck and find the card you will need for the following turn. He also has, when played, if you have less cards in your hand than your opponent places 1 card from their hand to the sideline. If you've played any card game, you know that discarding is typically good. Next up, 0 energy, 1 action point, 1500 or 1500 BP, supplies 1 energy, get trigger, Yuha Baha. If you're running the raid, you'll be running him. Next, 3 energy, 1 action point, 3000 BP, supplies double energy. When played, your opponent reveals the top card of their deck. Place that card back onto the top or into their sideline. I like this card, but he is also a color trigger, so you can only run 4 of those in your deck. And I think having the Asnot's color trigger is more important than having him. Next up, we have 4 energy, 2 action point, Yubaha, 4000 BP, 1 energy, get trigger. When played, choose one of the following. Choose up to 1 rated character on your opponent's front line and place the top rated character into the sideline. Or choose up to 1 character with 2000 BP or less on your opponent's front line and sideline it. Even if I wasn't running Yubaha, this is a strong consideration. Mainly because he has this get trigger. So you don't have to draw into him. You can also get him off of life and then play him on the following turn to get rid of a rated character. Next up, we have the 6 energy, 1 action point, 4000 BP, supplies 1 energy, raid trigger, Yubaha. During your turn, if 2 or more characters have been sidelined during this turn, he gains 1000 BP and damage 2. He also has the when played, choose one. Choose up to 1 rated character on your opponent's front line and place the top rated character into their sideline, or choose up to 1 character of 3000 BP or less on your opponent's front line and sideline it. All around, really good. He's 6 energy, 1 action point, and he's going to get rid of a card on your opponent's front line, most likely. If 2 or more characters have been sidelined during this turn, he gains 1000 BP and damage 2. I'm not sure how relevant that will be, as your opponent can kind of play around it and block that swing, unless you're resting down and KOing a lot of things. Which, I mean, that can happen with your stands, but I just don't see that first line coming up a lot. Next up is Lloyd. 3 energy, 1 action point, 3500 BP, supplies 1 energy. When blocking, he loses 1000 BP until the end of your turn. If the opponent's attacking character is rated, he gains 1000 BP instead. All around, I think he is actually pretty good. He'll see some play. The fact that he becomes a 4500 blocking rating characters, there's not that many characters who, when rated, are 5000. For example, in Yellow Bleach, Yubaha is the only raid even then he doesn't even start at 5000. He has to sideline 2 characters. So overall, I think he could see some play. Next up, we have Roy Lloyd. 1 energy, 1 action point, 2000 BP, supplies 1 energy. Your characters with raid can perform raid on top of this character. He's definitely a 4 of in a lot of the yellow decks. Especially if you're playing 3 of your raid targets, as he'll just be a wild card for any of the people who need to be raided. Next up, we have Robert. 3 energy, 1 action point, 3000 BP, supplies double energy. When played, if there's a character with 4000 or more BP on your opponent's field, draw a card. This is the double energy I was referring to when I was talking about BG9. If you're not running a lot of resting abilities, he's probably going to be your 4 of double energy. Next, we have 3 energy, 1 action point, Silburn, supplies 1 energy. This is a field, or site, as it's called in your arena. It has the get trigger. When played, look at the top 3 cards of your deck, reveal up to 1 Stern Ritter affinity card from among them, add it to your hand, place the remaining cards on the bottom of your deck in any order. Activate main, switch to resting, sideline 1 character on your field. If you do, activate this site's when played ability again. I don't know if sidelining your character is good enough for finding Stern Ritter off of top 3. Also, for reference, the Stern Ritters, I don't think there's a single yellow card. There's 1 yellow card that is not a Stern Ritter that you can't get off of that. And that will be your 0 energy step. Besides that, that is just all the yellow Bleach cards. And none of your events will be able to be catching off of that. So, on that note, I don't like this card as it could bottom deck your special triggers and your final triggers for restanding AP and going further on your turns. Next, 3 energy, 1 action point. This is your final trigger. If it is your last life, you take a card off the top of your deck and heal 1. Choose up to 2 of your AP cards and switch them to active mode. Every Union Arena deck's running 4 of that. Next, 2 energy, 1 action point. It is a stand trigger. And choose 1 character on your opponent's front line and switch it to resting. Even if I was running Bambita, I'm not sure if I would run that. Because all it is just a -1 to hand to rest something. And there are better options. So I don't think it's needed. Next up, 3 energy, 1 action point. This is one of the special triggers. Fear. Choose up to 1 character on your opponent's front line and switch it to resting. If Asnod is on your field, switch it to resting and remains rested. The next time it would be switched to active and draw the card instead. Overall, if you're using Bambita, I would play 4 of this over the other trigger. Also, if you're playing a lower cost version, the other special trigger will be a 5 energy. So you might not want to be using that one if you play a lower to the ground aggro version of yellow. Then we have Bleach, 1 energy, 1 action point. It is a draw trigger. Choose one of the following. Choose up to 1 character on your field. It gains 1,000 BP. Choose up to 1 character on your opponent's front line. It loses 1,000 BP. I'm not the biggest fan of this because it's just a buff. Also, you don't want to see it early as it will slow you down from setting up your energy base. Lastly, we have Metalize, 5 energy, 1 action point, special trigger. Choose 1 character with 3,000 BP or less on your opponent's front line and sideline it. If there's a rated character on your opponent's board, front line or energy line, or you have a Yuho Baha on your board, you can sideline a 5,000 BP or less instead. If you're using Yuho Baha, you probably have a lot of double energies and can get up to that amount of energy, so Metalize will probably be 4 or 3 of in the deck. Alright, and that's a little overview of the yellow bleach stuff. If you like the video and are looking forward to me going over the purple and green and my case opening in 2 weeks, like and subscribe.